There's a strange thing that can happen after you've spent a long time carrying heavy seasons. Even when life finally begins to calm down a little, even when things become softer, and even when you finally have a moment to breathe, part of you still stays braced for impact. You're still anticipating the next problem, still overthinking, still emotionally preparing yourself for things that haven't even happened yet. And after a while, you don't even realize you're doing it anymore because survival mode can become so familiar that you stop recognizing it as survival mode at all. It just starts feeling like who you are. The constant thinking, the emotional carrying, the pressure to hold everything together all the time. And I think for many of us, there comes a quiet moment where we begin realizing how exhausted we actually are from living that way. And I'm not just talking physically exhausted. I'm talking emotionally exhausted. Exhausted from always being on. Exhausted from carrying things that were never ours to hold. And exhausted from believing life always has to feel hard in order to feel meaningful. And maybe that's why choosing lightness can feel so unfamiliar at first. Because after surviving for so long, softness almost feels uncomfortable. But maybe life was never meant to feel heavy all the time. Maybe peace doesn't need to be earned through suffering. And maybe there comes a point where we're allowed to stop gripping life so tightly and finally let ourselves breathe again. Before we move any further into today's episode, let's take a moment to slow everything down. So get comfortable wherever you are. Soften your shoulders and take a breath with me. Take a deep breath in. And gently let it out. And one more time, take a deep breath in. And exhale all that weight you've been carrying. Wherever you are, allow yourself to arrive and walk gently into this space with me. Welcome to Find Your Way2Vyb. Hi, beautiful souls, and welcome back to Find Your Way2Vyb. I'm Amber, and I'm really grateful you're here with me today. This conversation has been sitting with me for a while now, and I really need this reminder today. So we're going to walk through this one together because I think many of us become so used to carrying emotional weight that we almost forget life is also supposed to feel light too. Not perfect and not easy all the time, just lighter. And I think there's a difference between moving through difficult seasons and slowly becoming so familiar with heaviness that it starts feeling like part of who you are. Because when you spend years surviving and adapting and pushing through, overthinking, and emotionally carrying so much, eventually your mind and body begin treating tension like home. You stay braced without even realizing it. You keep mentally preparing for the next thing. You struggle to fully rest because part of you feels like you always need to be on. And I think a lot of people are living that way quietly. So today, I really just want to explore what happens when survival mode becomes familiar, what emotional exhaustion actually feels like beneath the surface, and how overthinking and the need for control can slowly consume so much of our peace. But also what it looks like to slowly loosen your grip a little bit, to stop carrying things that were never fully yours to hold, to let yourself breathe deeper, to rest more, and experience life differently again. Not because hard things suddenly disappear, but because you no longer want to carry everything so heavily all the time. I think one of the hardest things about survival mode is that it doesn't always look dramatic while you're in it. A lot of the time, it just looks like becoming the person who's constantly thinking ahead, the person who's always anticipating needs, mentally preparing for what could go wrong, and trying to stay one step ahead of life at all times. And when life genuinely asks a lot of you for long enough, you adapt to that. You learn how to keep functioning even when you're exhausted. You learn how to keep showing up for people while quietly putting yourself on the back burner. You become so used to carrying responsibilities and stress, uncertainty, and emotional weight that eventually it just starts feeling normal. And for a while, that strength really does help you survive difficult seasons. But I think there comes a point where your mind and body stop recognizing the difference between surviving and simply living. You can finally arrive in a calmer season of life and still feel tense all the time. You can sit in a peaceful moment and somehow still feel like you should be preparing yourself for something else. Like you can't fully relax because part of you is still waiting for the next thing to happen. And I think a lot of people live that way without even realizing it. Because after a while, survival mode becomes familiar. The overthinking feels responsible, and the need to control everything feels protective. Carrying everyone emotionally can even start feeling like love. But underneath all of that, there's usually exhaustion. Not always the kind where you completely fall apart either. Sometimes it's quieter than that. Sometimes it's just this constant heaviness you carry around without noticing how deeply it's affecting you. And I know for me, there were moments where I started realizing how uncomfortable ease had actually become. How quickly my brain would move toward fixing or preparing or analyzing, even during moments that were supposed to feel peaceful. I could look back and see how often I stayed emotionally on without realizing how exhausting that really was. And I don't think I fully realized how draining that had become until I really started paying attention to how hard it was for me to actually rest. I remember having moments where I'd finally have time to relax at the end of my day. And instead of actually relaxing with my favorite TV show or my meditation, yoga, walking, whatever it was, my mind would immediately just start running through everything. Things I needed to do, what I needed to do tomorrow, conversations I needed to have, what I needed from the grocery store, things I might have forgotten. It just kept going. Even in quiet moments, I wasn't really resting. And I think somewhere along the way, because of that, I realized that I was tying my sense of stability to always staying productive. Like if I slowed down too much, everything around me might somehow fall apart, or maybe I'd fall behind in some way. But the truth is, life kept moving just fine, and it's still moving just fine. And now that I've found a way to reclaim some of that rest for myself, it feels really good not to live in that constant state of exhaustion anymore. Not to feel like I always have to be running on fumes just to keep everything afloat. And what's strange is when you've carried heavy seasons for so long, part of you almost forgets how to trust lightness when it finally arrives. Because survival changes the way you move through life. You get so used to holding everything together that peace can almost feel unfamiliar at first. So when you finally get a quiet moment, your mind instinctively starts searching for the next responsibility, the next problem, the next weight to carry. And I think somewhere in all of that, struggle can quietly become a part of your identity without you even meaning for it to. When you spend years being the strong one, the responsible one, the one who holds everything together, eventually it becomes hard to imagine yourself existing outside of that role. That realization alone stayed with me for a long while because I started questioning how much of what I was carrying actually belonged to me anymore. And I realized there's a difference between caring deeply and carrying everything. There's a difference between supporting people and feeling responsible for everyone else's emotional journey. And I think many of us cross that line slowly without noticing it at first. I think for a long time, I know for a long time, I confused being supportive with feeling responsible for everyone emotionally. If someone I loved was struggling, I carried it with me constantly. I would think about it and try to come up with a solution in my head. I would try to make things lighter for everyone around me. And eventually, I realized I was carrying emotional weight that wasn't fully mine to hold. And honestly, realizing that became such an important part of my own healing journey, which is also why Coda became such a meaningful part of my life. It helped me understand that I can hold space for people without absorbing everything they're carrying. And I think little by little, I started wondering what life would feel like if I stopped trying to mentally prepare for every possible outcome all the time. Not carelessly, but just gently loosening my grip a little. It was like I would ask myself, what if I allowed myself to rest without feeling guilty for it? What if I stopped carrying things that were never fully mine to hold in the first place? And honestly, I think that's where lightness slowly started returning for me. Not because life suddenly became perfect, but because I stopped believing I had to hold everything together all the time. I started realizing that I cannot control every outcome, and I cannot think my way out of uncertainty forever. And there's something incredibly freeing about finally accepting that. So even something as simple as putting my phone down for a while became part of that process for me. I started realizing I didn't always need to be reachable every second or emotionally available for everything all the time. I didn't have to constantly hold space for everyone and everything every moment of the day. I had forgotten what it felt like to truly rest, not just physically, but mentally too. And realizing that I didn't have to be available or hold space all the time was a pivotal moment for me. Because when you stop carrying what isn't yours, and when you start putting things down that can wait till later or that can distract you, you create space inside yourself again. Space to breathe, space to rest, and space to actually experience your life instead of constantly bracing against it. And I really don't think people talk enough about how beautiful ordinary life starts feeling again once your nervous system no longer believes it has to stay in survival mode all the time. You start laughing more easily and feeling more present, enjoying quiet moments without needing to fill them with worry or mental noise. And lately, I've noticed how much more I appreciate the really simple moments, like sitting outside under the sun or the evening sky, laughing with my coworkers over something silly and small, having moments where I suddenly realize I'm actually present instead of mentally somewhere else all the time. And maybe that's really what lightness is. Not pretending hard things don't exist, not avoiding difficult emotions, just slowly deciding that you no longer want to carry life so heavily all the time. Choosing softness where you can, choosing peace where you can, and allowing yourself to believe that life can still be meaningful without constantly feeling difficult. And before we close today's episode, you already know we have to make space for my favorite segment, Brooklyn Lights the Way. This little moment always reminds me of the softness and lightness children naturally move through the world with, the kind many of us spend years trying to find our way back to. So today, Brooklyn Lights the Way is dedicated to the children of the world that bring us a little bit more light. Because children have this beautiful ability to fully exist in a moment without overcomplicating it. They immerse themselves in the moment and they laugh fully. They become excited about the smallest things. They rest when they're tired. And they don't sit there questioning whether they deserve joy before they experience it. And I think somewhere along the way, many of us lost touch with that softness. We become so focused on surviving and producing, worrying and protecting ourselves that we forget life is also supposed to be felt and not just managed. And one of the things children remind me of constantly is that lightness still exists. Sometimes we just have to allow ourselves to return to it again. Before I close out this episode, I want to leave you with one final thought. I don't think choosing lightness happens in one big moment. I think it happens in really small ones, like catching yourself overthinking and deciding to let the thought go this time. or letting yourself rest instead of pushing through exhaustion again, or sitting in a peaceful moment without searching for what could go wrong next. Just small moments where you slowly stop gripping life so tightly. I think for me, that's one of the biggest shifts. Realizing I don't have to carry everything anymore. Not because I'm giving up, not because I suddenly don't care. I'm just tired. Tired of feeling emotionally heavy all the time, carrying things that I no longer have to carry. And maybe that's a part of growing too. You eventually reach a point where peace starts becoming more important than proving how much you can survive. Where you no longer crave chaos or wear exhaustion like some kind of badge of strength. You just want to feel present again. You want to enjoy your life while you're actually living it. I think there's something really beautiful about that. About realizing life can still be meaningful without constantly feeling difficult. So if you've been feeling emotionally heavy lately, maybe this is just your reminder that you don't have to carry everything so tightly all the time. You're allowed to breathe. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to experience moments of joy without feeling guilty for them. And maybe choosing lightness simply begins with giving yourself permission to do that again. So wherever you are today, I hope you allow yourself to breathe a little deeper, rest a little more, carry a little less, and soften into your life instead of constantly bracing against it. As always, thank you so much for walking this journey with me today. I really enjoyed this one and I really needed it. Something that has been on my mind. So if something in this stayed with you too, just take that with you. You don't have to do anything with it. Just simply notice it. And if this is a space you find yourself coming back to, please take a moment to like, subscribe, and share. It helps this message reach the people who might enjoy it and resonate with it as well. Until next time, walk slowly, breathe deeply, and remember, you can always find your way to vibe.